Hey guys, welcome back to the Pole Rehab Podcast. I'm Michelle from Promotion Studio.
And I'm Goddess from By Goddess. Last episode, we talked about lower back pain, facet joint, and rib slipping. Today, we're talking about 3 injuries that pole dancers constantly confuse with each other: pole hamstrings, adductor strains, and hip flexor injuries.
If you've ever felt something during flexibility training and immediately thought, I know exactly what I injured, hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll understand these muscles a little better. So let's start with the hamstring.
And if you're watching on YouTube, let's put a hamstring diagram up.
Yeah, we'll have it up on the screen for you guys in the middle. So the hamstrings are actually a group of 3 muscles located on the back of your thigh. The bicep femoris, you guys, I don't know how to say this. We're going to try and say this word because okay. Semitendinosus. Is that right?
Mhm.
Semitendinosus? Okay, wasn't that bad, but it looks weird. Okay, so bicep femoris, semitendinosus, and the semimembranosus. Yeah, we fell through that one, but we got there. But they all start near your sit bone and travel down the back of your thigh before attaching below your knee.
So the main job is to extend your hip, bend your knee, help stabilize your pelvis when you move. So even though dancers usually associate them with front splits, they're working during climbs, inverts, floor work, leg hangs, running, walking, like pretty much everything.
Exactly, and they constantly are producing force, not just stretching. So, how do hamstring pulls usually happen in pull? The most common mechanism is asking the hamstrings to lengthen while they're under load.
So usually like forcing a front split, kicking into flexibility, trying to force a needle scale, or trying to increase range faster than your strength can support. I did that in high school. I tried to I was trying to choreograph this like solo for myself, and I know I didn't have a standing split at all. So I was like, I'm just kicking.
I'll
I'm
just
gonna just
force
kick
it.
into it. And I
Perfect.
heard something pop, and I said, "Oh my goodness." I can't even remember how it was months. Months I couldn't lift my leg past 90 degrees.
Yeah, I was working on my splits like pre-yoga cert, so I didn't really have all the info I needed to do it on my own, but of course I was doing it on my own because, why not? And I was living in Australia at the time, and I was, like, on this pretty beach, and it was so beautiful, and I got my split, and I was like, "Hell yeah, I need a video." And so I went and got my phone, made it look all cute, did it again, and then I did it again, and then I did it again. Like, probably the 6th time that I went into it for no reason. Oh, I probably shouldn't cuss on here, but for no reason. Um, Immediate pop, and that was my most flexible leg,
Mm.
and it is no longer my most flexible leg, and I'm still getting that split back, and it's, like, the closest it's been now using my red light on it and doing my splits class on Fridays, because there was multiple years where I knew I just didn't even need to, like, I wasn't gonna strive for that split because she was not ready. Not ready.
Yeah, no, funny enough, the one that I hurt is my better split leg. So it's not doing me too bad. That was in high school though, so
Yeah, you maybe had a little longer healing because I could lift mine. Also, we could have popped one of the different muscles from each other because I could lift mine, but I couldn't slide forward into that split. There would be like a knot that would pop up, and I would be like, "Well, I'm not gonna push into that. That's not
mhm,
the move." But I didn't have it with like lifting my leg as much as I did as like putting my leg forward into a stretch.
mhm. So as it sounds, pulling your hamstring is not always like one dramatic moment. Like mine happened to be like a pop, but like yours was like over
Repeated
time.
overload. It still popped, but it was because
Yeah.
I forced way too much.
Yeah. So like sometimes it's repeated overload, like you said. Sometimes it's just that one particular pop. Maybe you're training your front splits way too much or just doing your front splits way too much. You don't want to push through discomfort. You can overstretch and it can be an issue. Yes, we want the splits, we want to be super flexible, but like not at the expense of pulling muscles.
Yeah, and so when we think about what a hamstring pull feels like, a lot of dancers describe a sudden pull, a sharp pain, a feeling like something grabbed during the movement and kind of like hold you back. And depending on the severity, there can be bruising, swelling, weakness, or difficulty walking. So I didn't have any difficulty walking, but swimming, I would like feel it when I tried to tread water.
Yeah, I had difficulty walking, not like to the point where I couldn't walk, but it definitely I felt it. And like I said before, I couldn't lift my leg past 90 degrees. So like I definitely experienced the pop. But the pop doesn't automatically tell you what the like how severe the injury is. It may tell you location because it'll be a localized like tightness, but you still don't know exactly what's happening. So you want to make sure you check on that.
Yeah, because a lot of people think like, "Oh, no, it feels so tight," and if you didn't have that pop, it could be like, "Oops, I definitely did this. This is hurt now." If you just, like, pushed past it, you could have just done enough for it to not make a sound, but still cause that tight ball, and when a tissue's just been injured, trying to repeatedly stretch into pain can just irritate it more, so you have nerves, you have tendons, you have muscles, you have ligaments, you have all these different things intertwined. It's not like it's just one thing. You don't just have a muscle here floating in some of your body by itself. It's all wrapped up in everything. So when there's a knot here, it's pressing into that ligament, that tendon, that joint, whatever it's near, and that's going to irritate it whenever you repeatedly pull it out, and then it keeps getting more and more swollen, more and more irritated. So sometimes we don't want to stretch into it, so early recovery is usually about respecting the symptoms that you're feeling, gradually restoring the movement, and eventually rebuilding strength, not just trying to win your splits back in a week. Like I did not get my splits back in a week on this leg. We were very slow with her because she was not ready.
And I feel like this is a good time to say, like, and I feel like I've just been seeing it more recently, like the get your splits in 4 weeks, get your splits in 6 weeks. Like,
Mm,
I really hope you guys aren't falling for that kind of timeline. You can never predict a timeline. Everybody's
yeah, it's
body's
not
different.
real.
Everybody chooses differently, and you don't want to be training for your splits every single day. It's not realistic. It's not ideal. That's way too much. You should really treat stretching like working out, like how you have workout splits. You should have stretch splits. You shouldn't be stretching the same thing every single day. It can be very dangerous. So just something that I've seen popping up recently, like be on the lookout. Like you could get your splits in 4 to 6 weeks, but it really just depends on your body. Some people's bodies are more susceptible to like stretching. Some people take a little longer. Not to say you can't get there, but it's very different for everybody. So don't fall for the 4, 6, 8, week thing. I think we'll come back to the idea of like not stretching too much in this episode and making sure that we are honoring our bodies. All right, now let's talk about adductor strains. And before we get into the anatomy, this is a good place to explain what a strain actually is. So, a strain is an injury to a muscle or tendon that happens when the tissue is stretched or loaded beyond what it can currently tolerate.
Yeah, strains are generally classified as three grades. A grade A strain is the mildest. The muscle fibers have been overstretched and irritated, but there isn't like a significant tear. So like basically like we're all stretched out and irritated, but nothing's torn apart yet.
Yeah, so for this one, you'll usually have like a little pain, some tenderness, maybe a little bit of weakness, but you're still able to use the muscle. And then we have a grade 2 strain, which is a partial tear.
And that's usually when you'll see more pain, more weakness, more swelling, or even bruising. And the recovery generally takes a little longer and then we have a grade 3 strain, and that's going to be a complete tear or rupture of the muscle.
And I think this one is a lot less common, thankfully, but way more serious. So if you have a grade 3, then you need to be going to the doctor immediately.
Lay down. Stop walking.
That too.
Don't get up.
I don't know that I've had a strain though. Like I have like a little like strain in my groin, I guess I could say, but I don't know.
I have a lat strain.
Yeah.
Um, I will say because of my other injuries, I didn't feel it for like the first year of healing. So I don't know if I can describe like the initial feeling of a lat strain other than due to the things that happened over here with the lat strain, it gave pain and tingling in my arm, but there was a variety happening, so it wasn't just from the lat. But currently, as I'm healing with everything, I notice my lat strain more, and I feel it from like the back of my armpit down my ribs, and I notice it breathing. So like I just started vocal PT for like basically breath work because I feel like I can't like catch my breath sometimes and it gives me like anxiety basically, which like I know I can breathe, but like it's like my rib doesn't want to fully move. It's like muscle guarding to lock. So I'm working on that. But mine, I don't think it's anything above a grade A strain currently. But I didn't get the MRI for a year, so I don't know where it started. I just know that it's a strain, so I just call it a strain.
Yeah, I don't think I've actually experienced a strain, but I can't really say
Probably for the
'cause
best.
yeah, I try to avoid the doctor if it's not like, going on for a very long time.
But don't do that, guys.
No, don't do
Don't do
it.
that. Don't do what we did.
We also have a little bit of a background, so, also good to learn.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's important not to diagnose yourself too. Like how she was like, I don't think I've had this. You could know that you've hurt something, but you don't have to be like, I've strained a muscle. Like sometimes hearing that mental, I know for me, the mental has been really important right now. So like, don't diagnose yourself just because you feel a symptom. Take a breath. Sometimes it's not that bad. Sometimes it's a lot less severe. Um, and then
yeah.
if you are concerned, you can always see a doctor
All right, so we're gonna put up a adductor diagram so we can see
in the
what
middle.
that looks like somewhere. Yeah.
So, looking at our diagram, the adductors are actually a group of muscles that run along the inside of your thigh.
So the major ones are the adductor longus, adductor brevis, adductor magnus, gracilis, and pectineus. And their main job is bringing the leg back toward the midline of the body.
Yeah, so basically squeezing your legs together. But they also help stabilize your pelvis and assist with movements at the hip depending on your position. Which is going to be important for everything, not even just pull, but like walking and like day to day life. Like we want these muscles strong.
Yeah, but if we think about like pole, like I immediately think of like Jade is the first thing that comes to mind because I always
Mm,
tell my students that they have to like pull that leg over, and there is a squeeze that you want to feel coming from the inner thigh, that is going to involve your adductors. So like anything like even your leg hang, anything that like requires like that squeeze, like upside down crucifix, laybacks, like all of that, like a lot of
definitely
squeeze.
the crucifix, my thighs, they cry. Sometimes they bruise.
Yeah, no, I definitely the laid back for me, like, cause laid back is still like it's not so scary. Like I've been doing laid back for a while, so like I know when I'm gonna be able to do a laid back or not. However, it is like, it's just your legs. So like
That's
you
all
gotta
you
make
got.
sure and then sometimes I slide down to a handstand. But I have let go too soon and luckily I've caught myself. But yeah, like it's
It's
scary back there
it's like
if you're not
I
squeezing.
I feel really comfy in my layback, and I feel just not horribly uncomfortable in my Superman. My Superman, I'm gonna like just fall right down, and
Oh yeah.
and then my layback, I feel a little more comfy, and I don't know where the difference is in my like squeeze, but there's something
Because the
different.
Superman, you have to open, squeeze, and slide,
hmm
right? Like it's not so many steps in the layback. Like
That's
this
yeah, you're
layback
right. You're
is
right.
layback, but you gotta like bring the
hmm
leg over, open it, squeeze, turn the hips, you
And
slide
I'm
down a
like,
little bit. It's too much.
it hurts.
One of my students does never want to turn her hips all the way down, and I'm like, you cannot run from the pain. Like, just do it.
Do it or skip it. That's the only option.
Oh my goodness. All right. So, because we're constantly asking these muscles to lengthen and create force, they're vulnerable to strains. And if we ask more that they can currently handle, then yeah, injury.
Yeah, and an adductor strain is usually described as the point along that inner thigh. Sometimes it's higher up near the groin, but sometimes it's further down on the inner thigh. So that muscle's decently long, and just depending on where we're straining it is where you're gonna feel it. It's not always gonna be the exact same placement.
Mhm. And unlike hamstrings, the discomfort is usually more toward the inside of the leg. With the hamstrings, you're going to feel it more like directly behind it. You might notice the pain when you're squeezing your legs together, getting into a middle split, changing directions quickly, or climbing the pole. I know I have like a little pain like in my groin right now, and like I can't change directions that quickly. I don't know that it's a strain, but like it
She
hurt.
said, "I did something there." I've thankfully never experienced an adductor strain, but I don't think I was ever doing well, one, I teach a lot of balance poses in my Sunday reset that I think probably keeps my adductors like nicely activated weekly for the amount of activity that I do. And then like currently, but even before, I don't feel like the majority of the tricks that I worked on were like crazy adductor muscles. They were more other areas. Wouldn't say I was necessarily avoiding it, but I wasn't like searching for it, if that makes sense. I
Mhm.
kind of stuck to what my strengths were.
I honestly can't even tell you how I possibly did this. I don't even know when it started hurting, but
But it hurts today. That's fair.
okay. So if you guys have experienced any strains, let us know in the comments below where it doesn't have to be necessarily the adductor. If it is the adductor, we definitely want to know.
hmm
But any strains at all, what it felt like, what maybe limitations you had, what you've done for it. Have you seen a doctor? So yeah, let us know.
Yeah. And one mistake that we see a lot in people, assuming it's a hamstring injury, when really the adductors may be taking the majority of that load. And that's usually just, we know the hamstring, we know the word, it's common. And so you're like, oh, something hurts, it's probably my hamstring. Um, but it's not always going to be the case.
And so again, we're coming back to not stretching too much, right? We probably need a little bit of strength rather than trying to gain more flexibility if we're feeling a strain.
That is true. So from here, we're gonna move into our hip flexors and the different injuries that are kind of common there. Um, so as we move to the front of the body, let's put a hip flexor diagram up for us here in the middle so we can look at it.
All right. And when people say hip flexors, they're usually talking about a group of muscles in the front of the hip. I usually make my students do leg lifts for their hip flexors because we definitely need that for our inverts. We use that to lift the thigh toward the chest.
Yeah, and the biggest contributors is the iliopsoas and the rectus femoris, although other muscles assist depending on the movement. If you invert, pike, chopper, tuck, climb, or even do compression work, your hip flexors are going to be working and activated.
Yes, which is why dancers tend to overload them. Sometimes it's a sudden overload, but more times it's repetitive overuse. So like we're trying to get our invert, so we're constantly trying to tuck our legs in and go back and bring our hips over our head. Adding too much training volume, too many compression drills, progressing faster than the muscle can currently tolerate. So I know a lot of us like really want to get upside down really quickly, or really want to climb. Like I meet a lot of students in my intro classes that like really want to climb so bad. And sometimes it could be like too much. So, I know we get excited, but like it's a journey and like enjoy the journey. Like we don't if we try to get like if you try to get to the big moves too quickly, then you won't actually understand like the bigger picture along the way. So take your time.
No, and I definitely did that because I wasn't taking classes in person. I was just like self-taught at home, right? And so when I look back at videos, and I noticed it because you pointed it out to me one day when you were like, "Ugh, she didn't pull both legs up in her climb." And I was like, I'm pretty sure I didn't pull both legs up in my climb. And I look back at videos and I would do like one pretty pull and the rest of them would be like right, right, left every time because my left hip flexor is weaker than my right hip flexor. So I wouldn't pull them together. And
Hmm.
instead of fixing that in the beginning, I said, I got my climb next. And I went on to I went on to my next moves because now I could get into them because I have my climb. And so now that I'm like coming back from injury, starting to like recondition, restart with everything, like I'm sure I can throw like some of the stuff, but like rebuilding it, I already know I gotta do it different because I want my hip flexors to be even so that my climbs look equally as pretty as the tricks that I was doing.
Yeah, I think coming from a dance and exercise science background, by the time I got into pole, I was very interested on like, all right, what can I do to make this easier? Like, what exercises can I do to make this easier, to make this prettier, to make this make more sense? Like, what's up? Like, I was actually asking my instructors for that because I'm just like, this is too hard. And it shouldn't be that hard because when you do it, it doesn't look like that. So, what are
Actually.
you doing to make it look like that? And like, especially with the climbs, like, I can't stand when it looks like somebody is struggle busting a climb. Like, no, we gotta make it pretty. Use that forearm, please. Please.
Unless you're
But
learning
yeah.
it. Unless you're learning your climb. Then you can
Yes, yes,
struggle
yes.
butts,
But
but
it's very no, yes, but it's very important to instead of like trying to struggle bus and being like, oh, I got my climb, it's very important to like
keep
take the
getting it.
proper like
Yeah,
I'd
like if
rather you
I would
struggle
have
bus on the
just
floor.
spent like one day a week working on my conditioning for my climbs, I would have had pretty climbs for like everything I did. And instead, all my climbs were average. They weren't horrible. I climbed, but like,
Still
you
strong.
know,
Still strong.
you know what I mean? Whenever you see the people on Instagram, probably you, but like other people too, who are like so whimsical with it and they're like, shoot, climb, shoot, climb. Like I think that looks pretty. And if you work on that conditioning, get the hip flexors super strong and supportive, it's gonna be easier. But at the time, I was just like, one day my hips will do that. And you do have to work for it. You do have to put forth the effort to kind of condition into it. But let us know in the comments, is that something that you guys often look to? Do you guys notice in your climb that you pull one leg before the other? Do you guys try and have that intention to pull them together? Because I think it's super common to either not notice it at all or be like super aware of it, just depending on like what your background is before it. So let us know. We're curious. Um, but with a hip flexor injury, most people notice pain or discomfort in the front crease of the hip. So like I kind of call that your hip pocket. And kind of like from the top of the hip pocket down is usually where in that crease, that's usually where you'd feel it, especially lifting the leg, inverting, or getting into a deep lunge.
And so this is why a lot of people say that their hip flexors are tight. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're actually just weak.
Me. I used to when I was working overtime all the time, I used to have hip pain in my right hip unless I was running. And if I ran, I didn't have it. And if I didn't run, I had it. And I was like, that's so weird. If I do more, it hurts less. But if I take a break, it hurts more. And like, why did I not think about like just strengthen the muscle? You don't have to like run that far to make
hmm
it strong. You could have done it way easier. But you
You know,
know,
it's so funny now that we're talking about the hip. I used to sit into my hip and then my hip could pop out, but it doesn't do that anymore.
cute.
I
Yeah,
don't
that
know if that
sounds
has
like
anything to do with my
instability. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it has anything to do with my hip flexors, but I just thought about that. I used to do it all the time, and that's not a issue for me anymore.
It's because those thighs are thick now.
Oh man. But so feeling tightness doesn't automatically mean again, we're coming back to this stretching, right? Maybe we need to strengthen the area and not overstretch it.
Yeah, because don't forget, although stretching is amazing, it can make it worse. So anything in excess is going to be too much of something. So just keep that in mind, um, in general.
All right, so we're gonna bring this all together now that we've talked about all three injuries. So let's talk about a little bit why we kind of confuse them for each other.
Honestly, it's because they're neighbors. Basically, if you think of how they're all sitting, they all live around the hip and around the upper thigh. They all contribute to movement at the hip, and during pull, they're often working together instead of one at a time.
So if one muscle gets overloaded, the others usually aren't too far behind. So let's say your hamstrings aren't strong enough to control the front split, your adductors and hip flexors may start to overcompensate. And so you'll start to feel those muscles instead of your hamstring working.
Yeah, or maybe your hip flexors are fatigued after a long training session, so your adductor ends up doing more work than they're meant to do. And because of all these muscles attachments and where they attach around a similar area and the pelvis and the femur, pain can sometimes feel like it's coming from the same place. I know for me, currently, but also previously, it kind of just comes and goes at random, but like it's not sciatic pain because it's like I know what that is and it doesn't feel the same, but sometimes if I drive, I'll feel a pain in my hip and it'll be from my hip to my tailbone, kind of like around from sitting with my foot on the pedal. And I know I'm building up the stamina for having my foot on the gas again. But it shows me different muscles that are like fatigued and needing that assistance because sometimes just be popping up in random spots.
hmm Yeah, so this is why many dancers say that they like pull their groin, but it could actually be their adductor, it could be their hamstring, it could be their hip flexor, or even something completely different. Like location cues, location gives us some kind of clue, and a cue like where it's actually happening, but sometimes we can be dealing with what's called referred pain. So it might be that the pain is like here, right? But we're feeling it all the way down here, or vice versa. So it's important to know where the pain, where you're feeling it. But sometimes where you're feeling it is not always where it's coming from. So it's important to be mindful of that.
And that's why understanding anatomy is so important. I know at the beginning of my injury, I did not understand it, and my injury made me want to learn more. Like I knew some, but not nearly enough for what I really needed whenever something got hurt. And so that's really important to like think about for yourself if you're going to be in this field of sport and in athleticism, wanting to work on these skills. Like it's really important to understand your body mechanics and your anatomy. The goal isn't to diagnose yourself from this podcast. Like that's never going to be the goal, right? But the goal is to understand your body well enough to recognize when something doesn't feel right, modify the training appropriately, and know when it's time to seek help and ask questions. Because none of us are going to ever know all the answers to everything, right? Somebody's going to know more than you in another area. So if you feel like you're in over your head, you can always ask for another opinion or for help.
Yeah, definitely, because treating the wrong injury can be very counterproductive. So you want to make sure that you're tackling the right thing and actually doing what's necessary for that thing. And the key takeaway to remember from today, again, is that flexibility is not always enough, is not always the solution. We want to make sure that we are implementing strength training as well.
Yeah, and when your active flexibility, strength, and mobility all improve simultaneously, your body's going to be way better prepared for all the demands that you bring to it in pole because pole is demanding.
Huh. All right. All right. So we hope this episode helps clear up some of the confusion between pulled hamstrings, adductor strains, and hip flexor injuries.
And if there's one thing we want you to take away from this, it's that these muscles don't work alone. They all work together every time you climb, every time you invert, every time you split, every time that you kick. You're holding yourself on the pole, you're using all of these muscles.
Yeah. And when one area isn't doing its job, another one usually tries to pick up the slack. So that's why understanding the body is so much more valuable than just memorizing injury names.
As always, this podcast is here to educate, not diagnose. And if your pain is severe or you're unable to bear weight, you notice significant bruising or weakness, or you hear a pop followed by loss of function, or your symptoms aren't improving, make sure you seek a qualified healthcare professional, please.
Yes, please.
Sooner
And
better
get
than later.
it. And get an MRI.
Yeah, of
uh,
course.
if you
Demand
enjoyed
them.
today, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, send this episode to a pole friend who always says, I think I pulled something.
And next week, we're finally tackling one of the questions we hear all the time. Why does my knee hurt? We're going to break down some of the most common knee complaints in pole dancers, from hyperextended knees to pain behind the knee to split related knee pain and patellar tendon irritation.
And we'll also talk about why sometimes your knee isn't actually the problem at all. So if you've ever had knee pain that just doesn't seem to make sense, you won't want to miss the next week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Pole Rehab Podcast.